Hello and welcome back to the Out of Program podcast. Today we're joined by Dr. Derrick Khor, a clinical oncology doctor and HealthTech connector. He's the founder of the Medical Consulting Group and he helps startups collaborate meaningfully with clinicians. Derrick also advises ventures like GG Ventures, Zinc and VentureBlink and is a prominent voice on LinkedIn where he bridges the gap between medicine and innovation. Hi Derrick, welcome to the show.
Hi Jing, thanks for having me here. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So, let's start with your early career then. What drew you to medicine and what were those first few years like for you?
Well, the funny thing is, it's not the usual case for most doctors or most medics, but I actually started off doing medicine because I want to do what I was doing now. I wanted to be a cancer doctor. So even at like the age of 18 or 17, I already had this fixed idea in my mind that, hey, I want to be an oncologist. And, that's why I just went to medical school with that very fixation on I want to do oncology. So really from year one of medical school, that's how I've been building myself up to reach to this point, which has not been easy. It's quite a long path. And just looking back, it has been like a journey of like 13 over years. But here we are.
And what was it about oncology that appealed to you so much?
I think it's really because it's such an area of need, back when I was 18, there was only 73 oncologists in the whole country of Malaysia, where I'm from.
Oh, wow.
So Malaysia is quite developed as a country, developing, as they say, quite developed as a country, quite a mature healthcare system as well. But oncology as a discipline, there's just not as many people in it. So I always joke that, if you put all of them into a bus to go to a conference and a bus turns over, Malaysia just does not have any oncologists anymore. That's why I wanted to, I'm a kind of person that's quite driven by need. So I wanted to do oncology because I know as well, cancer is the disease of the future and at present as well. We are going to get more and more cancer. We have more and more sophisticated treatments, but with the more sophisticated treatments the more human input is required. And we are fighting a bit of a losing battle here. So I've been quite driven by that, and so just push forward to that. It also helps a lot that oncology is almost you can say a sexy specialty now, where there's a lot of funding and there's a lot of research and a lot of global repute to it. So it's something that's always drawn me towards it, and here I am.
And you mentioned Malaysia. So you started off in medical school in Malaysia, but you've ended up in the UK. So how did that journey look like? How did that happen?
So I was part of a medical school, quite a unique medical school called the IMU, International Medical University. And IMU historically, when it was first formed, it was formed together with the collaboration of a lot of deans in the UK. So we have a very robust transfer program from Malaysia to the UK. And I did 2 years in Malaysia and 3 years in Dundee. So a lot of the Malaysian, if you come across a Malaysian doctor in the UK, there's at least a 50% chance they are from IMU or they go for a direct entry. And it's quite a straightforward process, but you just come here and just bam, straight away clinical medicine.
Wow. Was it a bit of a culture shock for you coming from Malaysia to a place like Dundee?
Well, I think to be fair, I came with my girlfriend, now wife. So that helps
Very
a lot,
Support network.
Yes. And I think home is never really too far away when I'm here with someone that I love and someone who really supports. We support each other a lot. And my girlfriend, now wife, is a medic as well. So we're going through medical school together in the same place, go through our assignments together, and really, really helps. Culturally, I'll say Scotland in particular has been very welcoming. There's almost virtually, I've not experienced a single shred of racism here before. And it's been really welcoming. People here are just very chill. The Scottish a lovely bunch of people. It took me a while to understand them. But now I've spent about 10 years here in Scotland. You kind of know. But it's been lovely so far.
But what about the culture of medical practice? Because I think that in Asia, they have a very different attitude and I guess cultural perception of the clinicians as opposed to in the UK where maybe views have changed over the years. Did you notice any particular difference or adaptation or did you have no strong opinions?
I think that's quite interesting that you mentioned that it's so the Malaysia, because we were a Commonwealth country, so a lot of our healthcare system is based off the UK. So not too culture shocky. And of course, IMU has groomed us to come to the UK, so we're kind of familiar with the comm skills, the OSCE station, the OSPI stations. That from a medical perspective, no, but I guess from a cultural perspective, we see a lot more differences, and I think one of the biggest shocks to the system, and I think Jing, you probably can understand this as well, is in the UK we tend to see a lot of social care being farmed out to people outside your family. So in the UK, we see a lot more people like getting external carers that come in to look after elderly people. Whereas back in Malaysia, in the more, Asian community, it tends to be children looking after their parents. So it's often like, it's all kept in-house, and it's quite strange to outsource all of this. And I guess
Yes.
that is actually quite an interesting problem slash social issue to think about, because a lot of what we see, a lot of the challenges we see in healthcare today actually is very social in its origin. A lot of beds are being blocked because patients don't have package of care and they can't go home in time. It's really difficult to organize, and we have lots of elderly patients who were left on the floor and had to fall in a long lie, and because they're just not living with family. And we see a lot more of this cropping up, and especially as the UK population is getting more elderly, this is starting to become a very, very real problem. So I think that is probably the biggest culture shock that we have, because in Malaysia, you're kind of expected to look after your parents. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differences I've noticed.
And so you progress through medical school, you go to Dundee, and you graduate and become a doctor. At any point, were you drawn to interests outside of clinical medicine?
Actually, no. It's just very interesting how I got here in the first place. So I graduated from Dundee, did FY1, FY2, got married at FY2 in December, came back, and then that was December 2022, and then boom, COVID. and COVID just took over our lives, and the lives of everyone. So I remember I was FY2 on a Monday, FY2 on a Tuesday, and then IMT1 on a Wednesday. And then I remember we were just shunted straight to the COVID high dependency unit. And overnight, we were dealing with lots and lots of death. And overnight, the whole world shut down, and only the medics are going to work, and only the medics are going to hospitals. And it's such a strange time. We just got married, didn't had our honeymoon, and we just like put into a life and death situation. It was truly like a war. I think lots of people would agree with me when I use the word war, because so much death, so much battle, and so much burnout. I think it was only around the time when my son was born. So around 20 around 3 years ago, when my son was born, when I started to realize that, wow, actually a lot of what we're doing in medicine is really unsustainable. And it is out of a frustration, where the time my son was born was the same time that ChatGPT came up. And I remember very clearly the day I used ChatGPT in my cancer center as an ST3. Just the first month I was working as an ST3 in the Beatson Cancer Center, and I was using ChatGPT. I was like, oh my God, this is going to change everything. This is going to change everything. My mind was blown. But at the same time, we saw all this talk about AI out there in the wild. But then I was also going back to my ward using pen and paper, and we're using
Yeah.
we're using like the kind of interfaces, the computer interfaces that we're using, the products that we were using were all like Windows XP interface. They were slow, filled with bloatware, and it just really wasn't very fit for purpose. We tend to work around it rather than work with it. So it became quite a frustrating experience, and we realized that a lot of this, a lot of this frustration that we see, and a lot of these tools that are not fit for purpose, are often built without clinical input in the first place. And a lot of the reasons why healthcare AI fail to go past the academic setting into real commercial use is because there's not enough clinical engagement. So it is by looking at the statistics that I really just started writing on LinkedIn. I took a selfie, posted up on LinkedIn, and from then I had 0 followers. But from then, that selfie took off by itself. In that month, I spoke to like 4 startups, 2 big pharmas, and that's how we began. It's just by saying, hey, very frustrated about this. Healthcare is reaching a breaking point. AI needs clinical engagement. Here's a picture of me. I'm a human being. If you want to talk to a doctor and you're building in this space, just let me know. And that's how it all started.
And I think that's really interesting, because I guess there are two aspects to your career that I think our audience would be particularly interested in.
Mm.
The first is that you started from scratch this consultancy, which we'll get into in a
Mm.
moment. But then you also became a very prominent and highly visible voice in the health tech space through LinkedIn.
Mm.
And I recall, observing your own career that it seemed like you were on just this phenomenal rise. The content that you were pushing was highly relevant, really valuable and highly engaging as well. So what came first for you? Was it the LinkedIn kind of engagement, or was it the consulting, or were they synergistic and in parallel?
So to tell the story from the beginning, it's a bit of LinkedIn first. So as I said, we took a selfie. Literally, I took a selfie, posted it on LinkedIn. Said, hey, my name is Derrick, and we had 0 followers. And then from that, we had like more people coming in to reach out to us. Like back when I had 0 followers, like literally 0 followers, and my post would get like 2 likes or 4 likes. And every comment, I was like, oh, someone's talking to me. I'm very happy, And it was just fun at that point because I was just a pure medic, a pure true and born medic. I was just focusing on building my portfolio to get into clinical oncology training. So, just really focused that. Did MRCP, the PACES, and that's how it sends shivers to my bones even thinking about it. But, so totally medical at that point. So I started writing on LinkedIn, and then I getting all this I was speaking to some health tech founders, and it was very strange. I was speaking to like this massive unicorn in Germany, and I was like, oh, okay, this sounds very interesting. So what I did was, one of this chief financial officer guy was telling me, oh, Derrick, this is amazing. How I wish I could adopt a doctor like you into our team. And I was like, adopt a doctor, adopt a dog. So then I created this organization called Adopt a Dog, where we just really start just having very easy and accessible conversations with founders. And what I found was so at this point in time, I've already spoken to like 260 health tech founders so far, but over 3 years, obviously. But around the time I was speaking to like 10, 20 founders, and I realized, the same questions keep coming up again and again. What is DTech? What is the regulatory things that I need to do? What kind of compliance do I need to put in place before running a pilot study in an NHS? Or how do I run a pilot study in NHS? What are pilot studies? What are clinical trials? What are evidence? How do you adapt it to the health tech context? So every time there's a question that pings up to me, I'm like, oh, I don't know that as well. So let me just do my homework. I read through it and I just create a content out of it. So, like things like what is Cyber Essentials? Or what is GDPR? What is Cyber Essential Plus? What is the DCB 0129? Things like this, I have absolutely zero idea. No idea what it is. So I just started learning, creating a piece of content. When I posted on LinkedIn, I tagged the people that I was talking to, say, hey, this is DCB 0129. Made it in a very simple and easy to understand way. And one thing we found was that a lot of these founders, they have to do 1,001 things. And Jing, I'm sure you understand this yourself. When you create something new, there's like 1,001 things you need to know. And there's a lot of cognitive load. There's just so much you need to know. And you ain't got no time to go through like 100 pages of stuff to like read through what's this, what's that, what do you need this. So you will need to create things in an easy to digest way that is like simple, high school level English. Read it, I got it. At least you know what you don't know. So that came the carousels that I put up on LinkedIn. And then that's why getting a lot of organic engagement, because it's just simply things that people need. The consultation that we've had, we realized, hey, I think I can monetize this. I think I can make a business out of this. And at the very same time, my co-founder Thomas Max, who's also a pediatrician, he also came to the same idea. They want to help clinicians. I want to help the health tech ecosystem, biotech ecosystem, to engage with clinicians in a more streamlined, smoother way. And we both came together and we started up the medical consulting group.
So let me take a step back a little bit to that journey of documenting your experience on LinkedIn. So a lot of people talk about when they start off in social media, they're shouting into the void. And, you kind of explain that really elegantly, where you say, your first few posts have got 1 or 2 likes. I mean, now it's a very different story for you. But how did you manage, I guess, the emotions posting? Because I think a lot of people will have writer's block, or they will feel nervous about posting. I know a lot of prominent entrepreneurs that have, highly intelligent thoughts and insights, but they struggle with the idea of conveying it and I guess just putting it out there.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that, especially at the early stages?
That's a very good question. I think for myself, there was a bit of a positive feedback loop, Every time I post, someone will reach out to me, and then we'll have interesting conversations, and then I post more, and then I get more interest. And initially we had like people reaching out in a month. Then it became 6 a week, and then suddenly it becomes 6 a day. And I realized, oh God, something is obviously changing here. And I created a website using a GoDaddy, the most basic website you can ever see in mankind, and it crashes when you go on the mobile phone. But just from that very simple website, you get so many people reaching out to us. You're like, oh, okay. So there was a bit of a positive feedback cycle. But I also conscious that it took me about like 20 to 30 posts before I really finally hit my stride and I really start to take off a little bit more. But, if I would put a very simple analogy for you, it's just like a cannula, As you get more and more senior, you don't necessarily get better at doing cannulas. You just become more brave, attempt a few more times. Because sometimes the difference between me versus an FY2 doing a cannulas, yes, I've done a lot more cannulas, but I'm also more brave knowing that I can do this. And sometimes, yes, I will fail, but I know I can do this. So I'm willing to try a little bit more. And I have the prerogative to be given more chances to try. So right now, I can post stuff, and some days some things get like 10 likes. Some days some things get like 300 or 400 likes, and then you're like, oh, all right, so some days it's gonna be bad, some days it's gonna be good. So just keep at it. So that's really how I just keep going.
And did you have any imposter syndrome along the way? Because not so much on the social media side, but more the content that you were sharing and the entrepreneurs that you were working with. Because I guess at that point, you were pretty early in your career, albeit with in the path of clinical oncology. But also there were a lot of topics that you were learning, along the way. So, how did you feel about that?
So imposter syndrome was definitely a huge thing when I first started off. And it's a bit better now because I've developed a lot more understanding and knowledge. But right at the beginning, I was like, why would someone want to talk to an ST3? Why would a HealthTech founder or a CEO of a large Series B or Series D company want to talk to me? It all changed when there was this consultation I had with this founder, quite a brilliant founder. And she literally stopped and asked me, Derrick, what is a ward round? And then I was like, okay, let's rewind back and let's start from the very beginning. And that moment is a very defining moment to make me realize that actually, we all have something to offer each other. A lot of the founders that I speak to, at least 90% of them, 80 to 90% of them are non-clinical founders. So brilliant people coming from a very solid commercial background, very solid technical background, people from Google, people from Airbnb, people from, all forms of very, very amazing backgrounds, They have a personal beef with healthcare and they want to innovate in healthcare. But they can see things from the outside. They can read the white papers. They can read the NHS news. They can read the HSJs. They can come up with the amazing top figure numbers, but they don't understand what it is really like to be on the ground, where the rubber meets the road. They don't know what it is. So the question comes is, what is a ward round? How does a ward round happen? How do I make the ward round better? And when you reach that level, you realize, oh crap, they have no idea at all. They have no absolute idea. So they often build things that are directionally correct, but when it comes to the nitty-gritty details, they kind of like just fall flat, And that is when I realized, actually, I'm not an imposter. The famous saying goes, only an imposter won't feel imposter syndrome. If you're feeling imposter syndrome, you're likely not an imposter. So, yeah.
It's a really great way of framing it, actually, because when you narrow it down to the definition of what your expertise is, you gain that confidence. Because if it was, I guess, people asking you about technology itself or oncology itself, then maybe those are areas where, you need more experience, more years in the field.
Yes.
But actually, specifically about your experience as a clinician in that setting, packaging that up as expertise, that is pretty profound and so valuable to a lot of the businesses that are building in the space. And I think you articulated that particularly well. Now, let's talk a bit about Dr. Doc and Medical Consulting Group.
Yeah.
Because you walked through that and it gave me a very quick kind of history to co-founding the Medical Consulting Group. But can you walk me through from the original idea of a Dr. Doc to their medical consulting group? How did that happen?
Yeah. So, it's a good question. Thank you for asking that. So, really, Adopt a Dog started off more of like a non-profit organization, very light touch, easy for health tech founders to come in and have a chat with a couple of clinicians. A bit of a very, very small clinical network then, just like about 10 clinicians of people that I've handpicked in various disciplines, ONG, GP, some surgery, some in orthopedics. And we brought together a ragtag bunch of clinicians where we would sometimes take joint calls with health tech startups. And it's very interesting because these clinicians reach out to me organically as well, saying, hey, I actually really want to join you in your journey and to see how we can do things. You know, what you've written is incredibly resonates with what I want to do as well. So let's work together. So that's how we began. And as I said, we did Adopt a Dog. It was mostly pro bono work. And then halfway through, we realized, actually, this is not very sustainable. You know, you can't be asking clinicians to be offering their very valuable time to give very valuable insights that would literally change your entire trajectory of a company for free. And while Adopt a Dog was fun, it's not something that most senior clinicians would end up doing for long term. And it's also not what startups want. And that's the one thing that I realized, because while early stage startups really loved us, but the bigger, more important, more serious businesses, they often ask me, oh, can you help me put together a focus group of 5 oncologists? And I'll be very happy to pay you. Can you give us a contract to sign because I need to show it to my CEO and my boss, etc., etc. And we realized that real clinical engagement at scale, you kind of need to be a serious business for it. Because if you don't take yourself seriously, others can't take you seriously as well, no matter how valuable your value proposition. So around halfway through, we realized, okay, we got to start doing some boring paperwork now. And then we started to set up the medical consulting group, register the company. We then start to, create proper documents, come up with a standard of protocol for our team and how we deliver jobs. And then we also set up an official clinical network as well. We set up an official clinic which is rapidly growing. We kind of have like about 1,600 clinicians throughout the UK, mostly consultant levels, because mainly our clients are looking for consultant level clinicians. So around that time, it's when we realized, okay, we've got to take ourselves seriously. We need to help build engagement at scale. And only when we come out with a sustainable model for both ourselves as an organization, the medical consulting group, and for our clinicians and for the startups, then that's when we can start to do real serious business on really engaging both sides. Because there's a bit of a balance here, you see. On one hand, you cannot charge too cheap. We have some people who say, I want to pay £15 for a consultant plastic surgeon to do an hour-long call with us. Not going to happen. A consultant plastic surgeons make, I don't know, a lot more money than that, even in the UK. And they're not going to have the time and energy to be engaging with you. But at the same time, we can't make it so expensive to the point where startups or any company just say it's too prohibitively expensive, and then we just break the whole clinical engagement cycle. So it's just a matter of finding the right balance and working it. And you have to take a very personal touch to it. Because while it's true, and we often advise our startups to, sweat their own network first, but the truth of the matter is a lot of this engagement work really requires a personal touch. You can't just create a big platform saying, oh, here's a marketplace, doctors, you go to the left, startups, you go to the right, and meet in the middle somewhere. I've seen like 8 of these platforms being pushed out. 8 of them, not a single one of them have succeeded, because it's just not the kind of business. It's a very personal, hands-on business that just really needs a touch.
And you mentioned your co-founder, Dr. Thomas Maggs. How did you connect with him, and how did you decide that he was the right person to move forward with?
That's also another incredible question, and there's a bit of spicy stuff to this. So around that time where Thomas reached out to me, Thomas is amazing character. He's a lot less low profile, but he's actually has an amazing career by himself. He was a pediatrician. He went up to like ST6 or ST7, passed all his exams, and decided he had a very good offer from another startup, and he actually went on to become a chief operating officer and did a lot of health tech work for a couple of years. And then bumped into the same problem where he found that startups actually really struggle to engage with clinicians in the first place, and found a better way of doing it. And Thomas was a really good guy, as a good person with a good character. At the time where Thomas reached out to me, I was starting to take off on LinkedIn quite a bit, and getting lots and lots of engagement from startups, from other organizations, from investors as well. And at that point, there was 2 others competitors two other competitors that were out there. And I had this very informal agreement with Thomas, saying to Thomas, I want to work with you because Thomas treated me like a human being, not rather than someone that he can exploit or use their clout to actually further their business. And the two other companies that were our competitors was actually very interested in poaching me. And one of them even just blatantly said to me, "Oh, would you be happy to just break whatever agreement you have with Thomas and come to work with us? I want to take all of you inside of me, all of your company, your IP and everything to my company, And that company had like all the fancy branding, fancy platform and all that jazz. But I was like, no, because you have to work with someone based on their character, and what you've just asked me has revealed a lot about who you are. And I'm really not comfortable working with you. So I just worked with Thomas, even though Thomas was just a two-man band at the time. I just chose the right thing, and I believe I made the right choice because that other company just folded in less than 4 months because they just ran out of traction. I ran out of steam. And I think it's important to do something because your intentions are right in the first place. Thomas and I were both incredibly passionate about engaging startups with the best clinicians, the unicorn clinicians that we call them. And that's what we believe in, because we believe that only with collaboration can great tools be built and less waste be made. And that's the same mission that we've carried on, and we've survived very long because of that.
And it's interesting, you mentioned the topic of exploitation, and I just want to explore that a bit more, because I do think that a common theme I often hear, and to be honest, it's also relevant in my own career journey, is that when you're a clinician and you're passionate about technology, you're clearly showing some, talent or ability in certain areas. There are a lot of people that jump on that. And I do think as well that certainly in the world of medicine, there is exploitation in the form of getting involved in research and doing dog's body work with very little credit. So there is an element of that. As you were a rising star on LinkedIn and becoming very prominent, did you find that there were a lot of people trying to leverage that and maybe exploit you for their own commercial gain?
All the time. All the time. I mean, just this week, I've received 4 or 5 different things asking me for my time and energy, and people WhatsApping me off the blue, just asking me to do stuff for them. And it's very clearly one-sided. It's very clearly they want to use my platform, my following, to promote their company or some jazz like that. And I do a lot of work, and I do a lot of collaboration with worthwhile causes. I do a lot of stuff for women's health. I do a lot of stuff for good events like health, like The Fix, like HealthTech X. We do lots of collaboration with these things, and I always promote causes that I'm really passionate about. But lots of people do want to ask a lot of stuff from you, and they tend to like to package it in the terms of collaboration. But with experience, with time, you start to see between the not so genuine offers and the people who are genuinely nice. But I'm not alone in sharing this. Lots and lots of very senior clinicians, professors, consultants also get handed a very terrible card. And it's not that uncommon for someone to just slide into my DMs. A clinician will slide into my DMs, say, hey Derrick, I've received a contract offer. I received an offer for this amount of work. Can you please help me look through it to see if it makes sense or not? I know you have a lot of experience in this. And I often read through it with them. And some of it, legit. Some of it is like, what the hell? And then some of it is like, I want you to do 40 hours of work for what amounts to essentially like £8.75 an hour. And you have to deliver like almost 200 hours worth of work. And it was really exploitative. It was really, really exploitative. And they often take that approach because they say, you're getting a lot of exposure, we're giving you a lot of opportunities to engage in the field that you otherwise won't have any experience with. And these are clinicians that are not junior doctors, by the way. These are clinicians that are like either very senior registrars or consultants. So I think not being very familiar with this industry and not understanding the facts and the figures can put clinicians at a very disadvantageous position. So I often write on LinkedIn, even on the very inflammatory topics sometimes, because we just got to talk about it. We've got to talk about it. We, as clinicians, we all need to lift ourselves up a little bit more so that we can work with industry in an even footing, rather than, have the wool pulled over your eyes.
Yeah, I bet. I think a lot of the audience will find this very relatable. Everyone wants to have portfolio careers at the moment. Everyone wants to explore careers in health tech. And I think that opens up to exploitation, especially for, a cohort of people that have not needed to negotiate contracts or think
Yeah.
commercially in their lives. Being a doctor, for example, is a conveyor belt, and you kind of just jump through the hoops and you always get a job. But then the thought of actually negotiating in the commercial market, I'm sure there's
It can be quite uncomfortable. And I think I remember the first few times where I actually asked startups, hey, you actually got to pay for our services. I felt so sheepish about it. And it was so hard. It was so hard. But we get better with it, because what's really changed it was us understanding the value of what we offer. And having done this, having delivered projects to over 50 of our clients, some of the biggest names in health tech as well, we realized that, hey, actually, what we're doing is highly, highly valuable, to the point where a lot of people will be willing to pay for us. And we often sometimes struggle to keep up with demand. So we know that actually our services have value, and therefore you have to pay for it. And once we understood that, the conversation becomes a lot better. But having said that, I think as clinicians, we have a problem articulating that value. It's hard for us to sometimes translate what we offer in terms of pounds and pennies. And it can be a bit more difficult, having pitched like 260 times already. I kind of know exactly what I need to pitch to a startup founder to say, okay, what you need is a consultant ops and gynae with a specialist interest who actually delivers IVF treatment, and they need to be working in the private sector, and they need to deliver a 2-hour consulting session to help you validate your product assumption and to also help you develop your tools. You maybe need them for half a day for the first month, and then cutting down a bit when your MVP is built, etc., etc. So I can talk about it very, very clearly, understanding the product development cycle. Or I can say, oh, you need someone to probably sit in with you in some of your investment committee meetings, or to serve as your chief medical officer to add more value, validation to your tool, etc., etc. So when you start to speak in the language that startup founders are looking for and they understand, it becomes a lot easier to sell. It becomes a lot easier to sell because you're speaking their language. But if you don't understand their language, you're starting to talk about very clinician typical jargon. They're not gonna understand it. They're not gonna understand it at all. You say, I'm gonna do a quality improvement project for you. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
And on a personal level now, you advise several organizations, Zinc, VentureBlink, GG Ventures. Can you talk a bit about how they kind of came about and how you balance those between what you do with the medical consulting group versus, I guess, these kind of personal advisory roles?
Well, actually, to be fair, these advisory roles don't actually take up as much time as one would think. They often they often have a network of advisors, and which they call on when a more specific role, when a more specific task comes in. So as you know, these three organizations, they are all venture capital investing organizations, and oftentimes where a piece of clinical due diligence is required in, let's say, the oncology space or the UK market, people then reach out to me to have a chat. Sometimes I sit in investment community meetings. Sometimes I review slide decks and I write like an official reply. So that's how I balance it. It's not as time tedious as you would think, but often these kind of roles are not roles that you can apply for. These are the roles that finds you rather than you find them. I think Jing, you probably understand a lot of this as well. A lot of these things you don't get to ask for. You just post on LinkedIn, and then one day someone say, "Hey, you're very interesting. Can we talk?" And that's how it often goes, isn't it?
Yeah, I asked the question knowing the answer.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's exactly right. That's the answer that I wanted to tease out, because I'm sure you get this question all the time, same as myself. Like, how do you get all these opportunities? And of course, if you don't directly seek them, although maybe sometimes you do, but it is through your other work. And as someone who has built such a prominent platform, such a big audience, you get offers all the time.
Yes, and I think it's a matter of balancing it. Now, this is a topic of contention, and I think this is a good thing to talk about given the audience of the Out of Program podcast. I'm balancing my thoughts about this quote I've heard, and Jing, I'll be keen to hear your thoughts about this as well. The quote is, say yes until you can say no. Right? All right, that's a bit of a spicy thing, and people can disagree with it. Essentially, you say yes until you can say no, which essentially means say yes to any opportunity that you can get, build up your following, build out your network, build out your credibility to the point where you get the lion's shares of opportunities. Then you can say no to whatever you want. And the funny thing is, right now a lot of people think that there's so much competition. There's so much competition. There's so many junior doctors out there. There's so many doctors looking to go into health tech. There's so much competition. How am I going to stand out? How am I going to get the opportunities? But if you look at things, Jing, if you take a step back, and you will know this very well. If you take a step back and you look at the same people that keep popping up in the same places, invited to speak in the same conferences, and getting all these interesting, exciting people, you can literally name 30 or 40 of them, and it's always the same faces. I've just put up a post on LinkedIn yesterday, doing like a highlight of like 15 of them, 21 of them, and it's always these same faces.
So true.
Yeah, and the question is, why are these same people always getting the same opportunities that other people just cannot seem to get access to? And really, there is a bit of like an inner circle. That's the honest truth. The truth is that there is a bit of an inner circle, where these are people that are trusted. They have delivered, and people think that, oh, you know what, I can trust Avi Mehra to deliver this project. I know I can trust Vishal to deliver this project, and that is the kind of reputation you almost have to build through consistency, through repetition, through creative means to get to that area. So I think that's but how do you get there? It's all very individualized, isn't it? Not everyone should post on LinkedIn. Not everyone should go to all the conferences and events. Not everyone. You have to be very careful on how you play your cards. But there's also some, and as you get more experience, you start to realize some offers are just too predatory, and you just say no to those. I written about this on LinkedIn before. I do a lot of brand ambassadorship, especially for these big healthcare conferences. I received one from quite a well-known conference, and essentially their contract was saying that I need you to post once every 2 weeks, 6 months before the conference, and not once you go into the conference season, I need you to post every single day. I need you to also, I need to post every single week. And then on 1 week before the conference, I need you to post every single day. And then I also need you to attend all these events. I need you to actively promote us in all of these things. And in total, you have to post about like 20 different times, 20 different pieces of content for this conference. And in what we're going to return to you, or we're not going to give you any money. That's literally clause number 1. And clause number 2 is we'll give you a free ticket. And the ticket was like 2 digits. It was like 2 digits. And you still have to arrange transport, accommodation, and everything. And you're like, nah, that's not right. That's not right.
I remember getting similar offers like this when I was a medical student, because I think people think you can get away with it with medical students rather than, people who are now in a professional setting. But yeah, I mean, those kind of things are endemic within the industry, probably within every industry, to be very fair.
Yeah. To be fair, very much industry. I mean, a good friend of mine who's a professor, she told me that, she was talking to this massive pharma, top 4 pharma in the UK and in the world, actually. And they were like very keen, dangling a bait, saying, oh, if you chat with us, we can give you what. And then in the end, they just ghosted her. And it's endemic in every single setting. So I think one just needs to know what you're willing to part with, what amount of time you're willing to part with, what is something that you're happy to do for free, and what is something that you absolutely will not do, even if people pay you money for. Because at the end of the day, money is not everything. And as clinicians, our integrity and our reputation probably is more important than.
And I think that's a really solid point, because, as you've been talking, I've been reflecting on that quote of yours, which is say yes to everything until
you can say no.
Yeah. And I was thinking, well, the qualifiers to that are that you can't compromise your integrity, right?
Yes.
Someone like yourself is a very credible voice in the industry. And if you were posting every 2 weeks about this conference, you're going to lose some of the trust from the people who listen to you, no matter how much money that they're offering.
Yes.
Forget the fact that it was just a free ticket.
It was only £50.
It has to be things that you personally believe in.
Yes.
And I guess you want to be working with people that you respect. and who share the same values as you. Because the moment you start shilling, that's when you lose all that credibility. And
Oh,
then
yes.
it takes a lifetime to build, but one moment to lose. And we work in such a small industry. As you said, there are 30 or 40 names that you see everywhere.
Yeah.
Reputations spread. And,
Reputation spread easily, man. I mean, we are all in the same WhatsApp groups. We are all in the same social groups. That one wrong mistake, and that's you done.
For sure, for sure. So I guess to answer your question, I think I do agree, though, about saying yes to a lot of things. Because if you're too rigid, I think a lot of people have very much a design in mind for their career, and then they may limit themselves. But actually, the beauty of, I guess, business entrepreneurship is the serendipity of it all. You can connect with someone who you just simply vibe with, and there might not be an immediate opportunity today, but who knows where you both end up in the future and how you may collaborate on that basis. And I've certainly benefited enormously from that serendipity. I've kept in touch with people where, I just simply like them. There's no immediate kind of business value, but actually it emerges later on. Certainly, if you think about the journey of Patchwork, I didn't set out to transform the world of temporary staffing from a young age. That was something that, I fell into through my conversation with Anas and through our shared experiences. And I guess we just rode that wave. It wasn't so pre-planned. And I think that is a really important lesson. And, prior to Patchwork, I was doing so many different things, most of which no longer make it onto my LinkedIn, but I was definitely hustling. And I think so. I think broadly, Derek, I agree with that statement, but I think it has to be put through the lens of like your values, of your integrity. These are all the kind of qualifying statements that you need to add to that before you say yes.
Yes, exactly. It's a very dangerous statement. That's why I've been always like, what do I think about this statement? Because on the one hand, it's how people get their start. And that's how I get my start. And how mostly, I'll probably say 90% of people get their start. They just hustle, they just hustle. They do lots of random stuff, some work, some don't work. You never know. And then, but it's through this clashing against the real world, through trialing and failing that you realize, actually, this is something I'm good at. This is my thing, And everyone's thing is a bit different, You can try to replicate and copy someone, and you realize that that's actually not your thing, and you'll never be good at it because that's just not who you are and what you really care about. And you can only really find it. Some people are very lucky; they get it in the first try. Some people need a couple more tries, And it's just you just got to keep doing it, keep getting at it, keep going at it.
Definitely, and you're currently still actively in clinical practice.
Yes.
You're still a clinical oncology doctor.
Yeah.
But you have you have the consultancy, you have these advisory roles, you also have these ambassadorial roles as well. You're spinning a lot of plates. So how do you look at all of these kind of opportunities that you're currently managing, and how do you balance it all with your clinical practice?
And add 2 little children to the mix as well. My son is almost 3 and my daughter is 8 months old. Yeah, tough question. Really tough question. I literally had like another fellow medic just literally randomly text me off the blue like, how do you do it? How do you do it with kids? And the truth of the matter is, I don't do things alone. That's the key thing. A lot of people like to assume that I'm a one-man show given my LinkedIn profile and stuff like that. But really it's not. MCG is run by Thomas. And we have a new hire, Amy, which is great. And they are both wonderful. The operational work gets done by them. Wonderful. Childcare is balanced between me and my wife. We both work very hard to look after our children. When I'm at work, I'm at work. We send kids to nursery. They get sick all the time. Not great. The thing about my life is 2025 has probably been the most intense year of my life. And I think it's just going to keep getting more intense because childcare dominates my life. And it's more about I've been very selective about the opportunities that I take. And even though I do brand ambassadorship for a lot of the HealthTech events, I can't go for the HealthTech events myself. So like the Fix, the HealthTech X, they're both wonderful events, great venue, great people, great crowd, but I can't go. And I choose not to go because I don't want to leave my wife alone at home to look after 2 kids. And I don't think that's fair. And I just accept it, that I have to say no to a few things because my family comes first, And it's cool with me, Every time this conferences or these brands comes up to me and say, I would like you to join our brand relationship, the first thing I'll say, I'm happy to help you, but I can't come physically. Can you give the perks to my team instead? And they always like, oh yeah, I'm happy to do that. So that's wonderful, you know. So it's just being conscious of what are your absolutely must have, and what the lines you absolutely won't cross. For me, my family is that. And the other thing is just that, you know, every day is every hour, I have to plan every hour, every minute has to be accounted for. You know, I'm going to do this at this time, I'm going to do this at this time, I'm going to do this at this time. And we just have to keep going at it. But I think I have a bit of an undiagnosed ADHD in the sense where I have to like do multiple things at once, or I'll get super, super bored. I think it's a very typical behavior for doctors, but yeah, that's how we spin the plates.
Undiagnosed ADHD.
Probably.
Yeah, definitely can relate.
Yeah.
For the clinicians who are listening and thinking about stepping into advisory, startup, public-facing roles, what kind of advice would you give on top of what you've already described?
I think before stepping into this world of industry, I think you need to first, and it is going to sound very zen and woo-woo, but you need to still step into yourself. You need to step into yourself and really understand who you are, what you want to do, what you want to offer. Have a bit more introspection about what's your experience been so far. And the second advice is just do it. Write on LinkedIn, go to events, talk to people, reach out directly to people, and people that you find very interesting, talk to them. And the more you do this, the more you start to build up your reputation, you start to build momentum. And that's the first step. But the thing that I would say 90% of clinicians tend to fail at is consistency and really keeping at it. Most people succeed not because they are better, brighter, smarter, or more experienced than any other clinician. Most people succeed because they are just there all the time. You know, they just keep showing up again and again and again, every single week, every single event, every single project, until the point they hit an inflection point and they just skyrocket because of that. So it's very typical in our industry. You often see a bunch of people just like moping around for 10 years and then suddenly boom, they suddenly become very successful. It tends to be the case, isn't it?
Definitely. And finally, what's next for you? What are you excited about? What are your plans for the future?
So a couple of things. Pass my exams, FRCR Part 2A and Part 2B. Woo!
Gosh.
That's the hardest. That's going to be my struggle all the way to
start with the
April.
highlights.
And then look after my kids, potty train my son, just keep being a dad. And for MCG, we're looking to just expand. We're just expanding lots and lots. We are opening up a chapter in Australia. We are looking into expanding into the European Union. Because there's just been some clients coming from the European Union, so might as well. It doesn't hurt anybody. And we're just growing our clinical network, growing our footprint, getting more clients, building more credibility in the space. You know, we are very much a bootstrap company, so we have a lot more flexibility to operate as we please. I'm not looking to raise any funds, which is thankful for. We are in a very privileged position to not have to raise any funds. But yeah, you know, just keep delivering this so that it makes sure that this whole process of health tech collaboration with clinicians and startups continue to become a bit more of a easier thing for the industry. Yeah.
Brilliant. Sounds very exciting.
Yeah. Tough.
So, yeah, I bet. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me, Derrick.
No problem.
And for those listening, if you like what you hear and want to support the show, please do like and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or whatever podcast platform you're currently listening to us on. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help us spread the message to others exploring alternative paths. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.